change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI Podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
All right.
Let's go. I'm ready. I'm so happy to see you here.
Yeah. Well,
fun little venue.
I want to welcome everyone to the Fundraising AI Podcast. I am here today with a very special person who I've known for actually quite a few years.
Yeah.
And it's just such an honor for you to take the time to spend time because you're in the middle of your annual conference this year. I'm here today with Soraya Alexander, who is the president of Classy and also COO of GoFundMe.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, I had that on.
Yes.
Awesome.
That's right.
No, it's so great to be here. We are in Chicago,
Yes.
where the weather is literally changing every 15 minutes.
Yes.
And we're here for a big annual non-conference conference,
Yes.
which you call
A collaborative.
collaborative.
We are here.
Yeah.
Favorite time of the year. It's so fun and special and lots of exposed brick and painted walls. And we're so happy to.
You always find like the most interesting and like off the beaten path kind of places
No.
to have these. Which
I know.
makes it feel new and freshly different every time.
Thanks.
So
Yeah.
Part of the strategy, right?
It's part of the strategy and also just letting our events team have a lot of fun. We talk a lot about what's the conference we would want to go to, and we just try to design everything around that. So it's a special place.
That's awesome. Well, it's so great to have you on here. You know, Fundraising AI is really, it's a group that is for everyone. Classy has been a sponsor of it, a sponsor of the Global Summit this year. So thank you for that. I mean, it means a ton. So then we can provide a lot of free resources. I just did a session on AI upstairs, and I thought maybe 10 people would come, and there were like, I don't know, 40 or 50. And the questions were amazing. Like, I would say only about 5 to less than 10% are using AI right now.
Yeah.
And we really got into the reasons why and some of those barriers. Like, I'm afraid of it. I've heard that it hallucinates or it's not private or secure. And so we want to get into the technical side today, but I just want to thank you for allowing us to have this conversation today, for your sponsorship at Classy. You've just actually developed some AI tools. Please. So why don't we, for the audience that doesn't know you, just take a second to like tell your story a little bit. The first time I met you, I'll say this actually, I'll go back a little bit. It was down in San Diego.
Yeah.
I didn't really know you at all. You were head of market, VP of marketing.
Yeah.
And I left and I'm like, holy moly, like this woman is like impressive.
Oh man.
No, like zero doubt, like why you're doing what you're doing and leading such an amazing
So nice.
organization. Like, were you always that way? Like, when you were 10 years old, like,
Side obnoxious and precocious. Yes. So my parents would say it.
that, the president of a very large, company and leading, was that always your path?
Yeah, no, I was definitely going to be Secretary of State and I failed miserably at that. So now I'm doing this. No, well, first I will say, Nathan, when we met, you were doing such interesting things in this space and I don't think we talked about AI very much at all. Whatever it was 5-6 years ago, we talked a lot about intelligence and tools and how to help fundraisers be more successful and all of your kind of amazing decades of work in this area. And then suddenly everybody, in nonprofit space or not, started thinking about AI, and you have helped steward the conversation in such an immensely important way. And so I just first want to start with just real gratitude because you've managed to create space to ask these questions and navigate because nobody really knows what's going on. So first of all, thank you for having me and thank you for that because it's really important. No, I started very, very kind of passionate about the agency we can have in the world. And I think like a lot of people in this sector, feeling deeply impatient with injustice in the world and wanting to kind of commit myself to that. So in my childhood mind, that was Secretary of State, fixing global inequity. As I grew up, it ended up being more in the nonprofit space. And the way that manifested was actually starting in digital strategy and consumer strategy for many of the largest kind of nonprofits and foundations working in DC. Worked my way to PBS and did a lot of kind of corporate underwriting work, new market development, things like that. And then found my way to the for-profit world where I actually did consumer strategy, loyalty, e-commerce, analytics. and suddenly found Classy, which is essentially all of those things coming together. It's essentially e-commerce, customer loyalty, analytics for the sector that holds my heart. And so I love my job and I'm really grateful for it.
That's awesome. It's awesome. So I like to start by sharing kind of like an orientation, asking a question, orientation around technology in general. So like I had a friend, Kelly Heck, AWS, who is
Kelly's a friend to all of us. Yes.
Yeah. Who would admittedly say she's not an early adopter. Like, where are you at with technology? Are you, and I'm an early adopter to my own fault. Like, I'll try something that's so new that guaranteed going to break and like cause a lot of frustration. So where do you fall in like that continuum of like, I'm interested in new things, or I wait till someone proves it to me?
I think it's less new tech. I think I am a very, very curious person and I love testing. Like, I'm not very scared of failure. Somebody, Edwin Gutier, yesterday said something on stage where he talked about when you're exercising, you accomplish failure if you really push yourself. And I thought that was so brilliant. I've never heard somebody say that outside of the exercise realm, and it's so obvious. And so I don't care if it's new tech, if it's a new way of doing things, if it's a new fundraising tactic. I love kind of leaning into that because it's just the learning, and that can be applied kind of broadly.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good mindset to have. Like I get forward.
Yeah.
And so it's like when I try new things, I take that out in technology a lot of times, and like when I try something new. We were talking earlier, so the session that I just did, it's like very few people are using AI mainly because they're afraid of it, or just they haven't seen the practical application of it. So I think it's really good because when everyone's on a different spectrum. Yeah. So when we hear from listeners of Fundraising AI, which is just kind of exploded, like creating a safe space to talk about it, not in like technological terms, that just change, right?
Yes.
Change is scary for a lot of people.
Yes.
So I don't know if you have any tips on dealing with change. I'm sure you do with your team. Like
I have
always in a state of evolution, right?
Always. I think an old boss talked to me about, nobody's ever hired to run things or to manage things. Yeah. You're hired to drive things forward. And so if you think about your role, I think about my role all the time as advancement, then change actually is the job. And so it becomes less scary. What actually becomes a higher bar is, what are you changing for change's sake?
Right.
And what are you changing because you know kind of what you're trying to accomplish? And so we spend a lot of time asking questions, getting to first principles of not can we change, not is this change improving some things, but what exactly does great look like measurably? Like, what does great look like? What are those kind of first principles? And then how do you reverse architect to what would we need to change? How do we know we're on the right track? And then thinking a lot about what are the unintended consequences. And so that's actually our guardrails, where if we move slow, and actually we'll get to this, but AI, we're moving quite slow. And it's because of those guardrails of what do we not know? What might be the unintended consequences? And will the upside outweigh the downside? And if not, you take your time.
Yeah. So there's so much wisdom in there. I think that was the premise of starting Fundraising AI.
Yes.
Really, not just looking at like the ethics of like, is this ethical or unethical, but it's like, what are, the true benefits, not just short-term, but long-term, right? Or what are the unintended consequences?
Yes.
Like social media, we use that as an example, right? Because you and I were very much in this part of like social media can do anything. It can bring community together.
Yes.
And we'll talk about community in a second, in ways that we never saw in society. And we had such optimism and hope that it was going to do this. And a lot of us went in pretty deep in social. And now we look at the unintended consequences are fairly pervasive. And so I think in this go around of human versus AI, let's make a strategic and measured approach.
Yes.
That's real smart.
Yes.
Your approach at Classy. If you, for those that are unfamiliar with Classy, it's kind of like just the high level, like what is it? And then I'd love for you to share a little bit, because I think you live in an interesting world with like Classy, and we're going with GoFundMe.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I talk about in the book Generosity Crisis, GoFundMe quite extensively. It's like people want to express their generosity, and perhaps nonprofits are, they're not the only way.
Yes.
But maybe nonprofits weren't able to find generosity the way people wanted to make it happen, but GoFundMe provides an own solution to feel impact. So I know there's a lot packed in there.
Yes. No, it's so good. So
GoFundMe.
Yes. Marriage. Very happy marriage. So Classy provides fundraising tools for nonprofits. We exclusively work with nonprofits. Everything we build is around digital engagement for marketers and fundraisers. So we do everything from direct giving. We do all kinds of events, pre-registration, on-site event management. We do a lot of peer-to-peer. We do registration with fundraising, the events plus peer-to-peer. And now we're starting to kind of layer on a lot of, well, several years ago, we brought on a lot of payments, infrastructure, and tools. And now we're starting to lay on intelligence products as well. And a couple of years ago, GoFundMe and Classy have always been kind of very friendly because we serve different sides of the philanthropic ecosystem. We've known each other forever. We're both kind of San Diego born and bred companies. And a couple of years ago, we said, there's just something unmet in the opportunity. GoFundMe is largely your immediate network showing up for you in solidarity. So people know the big campaigns. The vast, vast majority of who shows up on GoFundMe are your neighbors, your colleagues, your family. In these moments of saying, I have a need, these relationships exist offline, but we actually want a platform to bring everybody together visibly in one spot. Words of support, financial support, all these other ways that people show up for each other. But there's no concept of donor stewardship. These aren't donors, these are your friends. There's no concept of long-term structural support. This is somebody in a moment of need. But we know the organizations doing that work, thinking about donor engagement, thinking about long-term philanthropic engagement, thinking about structural change. If we can bring those two sides of philanthropy together, there's so much more we can do in the world. So that was the genesis of the companies coming together. And now we're about a little over 2 years in, and there's still completely separate platforms serving different consumer needs, but there's a lot of work in the intervening space to bring the opportunity together. So for example, we brought our data organization together. That was one of the first things we did. And then we scaled it. And now we're sitting on incredible insights. We've got, collectively, we've been around for about 12 years, raised well over $30 billion on behalf of nonprofits and individuals, about 150 million people in our database who have given across cause categories, types of giving, all of these things. Like there's incredible insights that we are now excited to kind of share back with the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So, again, spending 20 years in the nonprofit sector, I think, this is obviously, well, I don't know, people probably hate me for this, but I believe the nonprofit sector was doing its very best and thriving in its way of like literally connecting people to make them feel like they're making impact at a very low barrier. Like, I don't know that GoFundMe would even need to exist.
Yes.
The reality is that our sector has had a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
That we make giving very transactional, but people want to express impact. And now you can express impact in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So you can express it by helping a neighbor or a friend or a friend of a friend, or you can express it by going to Patagonia and buying, a shirt and saving the home plane. Yeah. So I think GoFundMe addresses that other side, but also, where I think about, we'll transition into like community.
Yeah.
You speak a lot about community. I just helped co-author something with Classy the other day on community, and this idea where, technology can be used to help bridge people, to bring people together, to kind of like looking at the data and what do GoFundMe donors look like, what do Classy donors look like, and really looking at the delta. Like, where's the harmony between where we can like do more of that at scale. And so I missed your keynote yesterday.
Yeah.
But
great. This is all going to sound new.
I'm so bummed. Hopefully it will be online because I was dealing with flights and weather and all this kind of stuff. But I will tell you, at dinner last night, it was like the talk.
Oh, man.
People had shared, literally someone had shared the best keynote they'd ever heard.
Oh, man.
About community. And I know this is something that's big for you and for Classy. So maybe talk a little bit about that. And then let's dive into like how technology, community, most people don't think about that from a context of like AI or technology and how it can help scale communities.
Yes.
Touch on that a little bit.
One of the things that we think about a lot is what does community mean? So I feel like it's become a real buzzword where now everything is getting rebranded to community fundraiser. And when you actually look at community, so I'll cite Katrina Van Huss, who well, Turnkey for Good. They're kind of social psychological aspect of what community means. And it's a lot around group dynamics. And one of the things we've kind of dissected is nonprofits often will talk about community of supporters. There's nothing community about that. Right. That's actually just an attribute in your CRM. Like they've given, you call it a community. There's nothing community. Yes. Yeah. And so what we're talking about is how do you transition community as a noun into community as a verb, where like there are group dynamics happening, and that creates connection, that creates durability, that creates stickiness, that creates activation. And the truth is, we actually, in all of these other areas of our life, try to connect people. Yeah. And for nonprofits, the way that we have set up giving is you give a donation, I give you a tax receipt, and it is completely isolated. Everybody has blinders on. And so if I look at my neighborhood, I have no idea who else in my zip code has given to the causes I give to,
Yeah.
is a consistent supporter, would show up. We have never been asked, by like, let's say a nonprofit that I support, hey, did you know there's 30 other people in your zip code who give? Would you like to be connected?
Yeah.
Also, did you know I have this $5,000 thing that I want to do? And then just let us take it from there.
Right.
What would happen?
Right.
I've never been approached by a nonprofit in that way. And I tell this story, but I'm a donor to the Innocence Project. I've got a lot of swag. I was wearing the swag. I walked into my mother's house and she goes, I'm a monthly giver. I have no
Really?
idea.
Oh my God.
We are like so happy. We have all this energy. We're looking at each other. There's nothing for us to do with that.
Right.
They were not being asked or engaged at all. And so one of the things that's kind of exciting about what we see on the GoFundMe side that we're trying to bring over, you said, if nonprofits were really affected, maybe we could do this. Well, I actually don't know, because in GoFundMe, it's all about that visibility
Right.
and that access and that connection, and everybody stepping up and saying, I see you, you are a human, I'm a human, I'm in connection. It's very different than the way I think a lot of nonprofits will run peer-to-peer campaigns, where it's still nonprofit organized, they've got their champions, that cascades. It's a very different dynamic. And I don't know that we actually have the tools yet to really support that kind of partnership.
And, and I'll have to, so I don't alienate everybody out that's listening to this, be like, nonprofits are amazing organizations. The generosity crisis, quote unquote, the decline in charitable participation, I think, is the fact that, and you do create a lot of safe space to be able to talk about this, is that nonprofits have lost their sense of, and their ability to bring people together. And so we've traded those relationships for revenue in a lot of cases, unintendedly, but we done that a lot of times. But I do think there's tremendous promise in this, is that when you get back to the roots of it's not about a transaction. And I love your idea of being heard. Nonprofits are inherently capable and in a very unique way, situated in a community to literally bring people together in profound ways. And I think that's just so much untapped potential.
Yes.
I really consider myself a very hopeful person on this. Is that we just have to realize that the path we're on is a bit transactional.
Yeah.
And then move the pendulum back to bringing a deep sense of community, because people that feel that sense, and I feel like in this very digital world and algorithmic world, people are sensing connection.
Yeah. I think there's two things on that, which is one, there's a generational shift. And so the way we've been designing our campaigns actually really responds to a particular generation. We just did a consumer survey ahead of end of year last year. One of the most interesting pieces of feedback we got is older generations are giving to support a nonprofit doing particular work. They are giving so you can do the work.
Right.
Younger generations give as a hand raised that they want to be participants. Yeah. It's a very different way of giving. And so it's not that any of our campaign styles were wrong. It's that as we continue to try to engage in new kind of eras, new generations, new cohorts of givers, the intention is different. Therefore, the response and the mechanisms have to be different. And the second part of that is, I'm a technologist. This is on me. This is, I'm indicting myself, where the tools we have given don't actually allow for that connection. We are working on that. We are addressing it. All of our roadmap is responding. But I don't think the average organization that is working on driving all of these revenue streams, all of these donors, all of this program work has also the capacity to say, now I've got to build up an entirely new technological infrastructure to support that kind of connection. That's way too much. And so we take this on ourselves as a challenge to say we need to give more tools so people can better connect their constituents.
Yeah, that's awesome. When people ask, how do I evaluate technology, whether it's good or bad, and it's just binary terms. And honestly, there's a rubric for is it private and secure, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I really, from a very simplistic perspective, does this technology bring people in the community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does it, reinforce and instill trust? If it does not, you really don't have community without trust.
Yes.
If it can't do that, why are you using it?
Yes.
Right. You're literally, you brought technology that just creates transaction.
Yes.
A lot of my talk on generative AI is just creating more is not good.
Yes.
It's a ship without a compass.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have specificity and intent, how you're going to use that to literally bring people together, it can be a really powerful force.
It's funny, before we launched, we were not the first to market on AI tools. And it wasn't by design that we weren't first to market. It was by design that we went slow. Oh, we've got background music. But one of the very first things we did before we built any product, before we ran any models, was we had a council internally that said, what are the principles on which we're going to build on anything? And we talked a lot about transparency, about security, and about control. And anything we build is going to be against those principles. And then we can kind of feel confident, because otherwise it's just not worth it. Getting insights at the expense of people's trust, like everything's gone. And so we're really excited that we're launching things kind of now at Collaborative as our first kind of intelligence product. And we're seeing incredible results. I completely agree with you. Yeah.
Well, since the research are on, I think it's probably our
That's our cue. That's
I want people to learn where they can learn more about that.
Yeah.
And learn more about your approach to community.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. Well, classy.org. Please come visit us there. And also, I'm on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people to hear all of the good, bad, and ugly responses to what I'm saying, because it informs everything we build. And I just really appreciate all of the conversations always.
Cool. Thank you so much for the time. Thanks for everybody for listening in.
Thanks so much.
And we'll be back to you soon with another episode of Fundraising.
Can't wait to listen.
All right, take care.